So good, so good, so good.
Get ready, cause Clear the Rack is on at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through Monday, find incredible deals on Wear Now styles. On sale for even less at Nordstrom Rack. Take an extra 25% off red tag clearance throughout the store from brands like Free People, Steve Madden, Vince, and more. All sales final. The best stuff goes fast. So shop this sale at Nordstrom Rack today. Please see NordstromRack.com or ask a store associate for details.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
Thanks so much for joining. This is economist Steve Moore. Appreciate people listening in. We are on every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. following the great Larry Kudlow. And it is the highlight of my week to be in front of this microphone and talk to you about the leading issues of the day, both financial and both economic. And then I would say we also talk about politics a lot and then other issues. Last week, we talked a lot about why women aren't having more babies. So we try to talk about anything that really affects our society and especially how well the economy performs and how you can make more money. That's why we called this the More Money Show. So much to talk about. By the way, we've got a great show. Today, we're going to have on David Asman. You know, David, he's from Fox News and one of the smartest economic and political analysts they have there. And you see him all the time, and he's a good buddy of mine. And then we have Newt Gingrich coming on shortly. He's going to talk about this Republican budget and how we get it passed and how it can be improved. And so that is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about what are some of the flaws in the Republican budget. As you know, I think most of you know that this bill failed to get through the House yesterday. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and make some fixes to it. It was defeated by many of my fiscally conservative friends in the House who say there's not enough growth in that bill and there's not enough spending cuts. And I happen to agree with them. Look, I'm the first person who wants to get this bill done as quickly as possible. I think it's urgent. I think the faster we get the bill signed, sealed, and delivered and on Donald Trump's desk, the better for all of America. And I think we're going to see a real stock market boom when that happens. But it can be improved. And there are a lot of ways it can be improved, and we're going to talk about that throughout the next 2 hours. By the way, what a spectacular day. I had the greatest morning. I got to go for a long, beautiful bike ride in, the blue skies, not a cloud in the sky, a nice temperature. And I think that's the case all over the East Coast. So I hope you're getting out into the sunshine and the fresh air, getting a little warmer, but it's a nice temperature here in the Washington, D.C. area. And I know most of the places across the eastern coast of the United States, that's the case. So get out and get the exercise, have fun. It's a Saturday, for goodness sake. So have some fun today. Couple things. I was on C-SPAN the other day, and I like to do C-SPAN. I don't know if any of you watch that show, but it's there's a show called The Washington Journal. It's on from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on C-SPAN. And I like C-SPAN. Those guys cut it right down the middle. They have conservatives on, they have liberals, they have Republicans, Democrats. You hear both sides of the argument. And I like to come on because I like to see and hear what people are thinking. They take callers, and as the guest, which I was, you respond to the callers, and they do it fairly. 1/3 of the people who call in on the Republican line, 1/3 call in on the Democrat line, 1/3 call on the independent line. Although I think what happens is a lot of the liberal Democrats call in on the independent line, say they're independent, and then they sound like Bernie Sanders. In any case, we were talking about the budget. We were talking about the economy. And I had said earlier in that program that I believe that people who are able-bodied should not be getting, if they're not working, they should not be getting these welfare benefits. If you're able to work, there are jobs. We have 6 to 7 million job openings in this country. And look, I've been unemployed. I feel the plight of, I hate it when people lose their jobs. I know it's a very traumatic thing. As I said, I've lost my job before, and that's a tough period. It's stressful. It caused a lot of anxiety, it caused a lot of financial stress. But the most important thing when you lose your job is get another job as quickly as possible, get back in the workforce. We have a lot of people who have not just chosen not to get back in the workforce. Many of them, by the way, are federal employees who maybe lost their federal job and now they can't seem to find a job in the private sector, even though the jobs are out there. Anyway, so I was just saying, look, one of the rules of these welfare programs is if you're going to get free food from the taxpayer, me and you, if you're going to get unemployment benefits that go beyond even the amount you paid in, if you're going to get housing assistance, if you're going to get free health care through Medicaid and other programs, you should have to either have a job or you should have to be in a job training program. If you're able-bodied, I'm not talking about somebody who's in a wheelchair or someone who has mental health problems and can't work. I'm talking about people who are able to work. Many, by the way, are males between the ages of 25 and 60 who easily could be working but aren't. In fact, I wrote a column this week about the missing males in the workforce. And so anyway, I said, I don't know if this sounds cold-hearted to you. Do you think this, I'm like Satan, I've got horns coming out of the side of my head because I think people should have to work for their benefits? Well, apparently some of these C-SPAN callers did because, oh my God, I had this one woman call in and she said she had a good paying job and she got laid off and she can't find another job. And you're so mean, Steve Moore, and you're so cold-hearted. And I said, look, I understand it's hard when you lose your job, but why aren't you working? Why can't you find another? Well, I can't find exactly what I want. Well, like life isn't perfect. If you can't find exactly the job you want, get another job, and then you can continue to look for a job while you're on that job. And so I wonder what you think, folks. Do you think Steve Moore is cold-hearted? Because I think people should be working. Incidentally, David Bahnsen was on this show last week. He's one of my favorite financial analysts and a really good guy and smart guy. He's written several books about the economy. And he talks about, and Larry Kudlow talks about this all the time, and I do, that there is dignity in work. There is a feeling of self-worth from working. My mom used to have this saying, my dear old mom used to say, idle hands are the devil's workshop. And I love that saying. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. That's when people get in trouble, when they're not working. If you're working, you can't get in trouble. If you're, a 21-year-old kid and you don't have anything to do, that's when these kids get in trouble. So there is a lot. And by the way, people live longer if they work. People are healthier if they work. People are happier if they work. So we're not doing people a favor by paying them not to work. Now, why do I bring that all up? Because the Republican bill, and this has become very controversial, basically says if you're going to get Medicaid and you're able-bodied, you have to get a job. And by the way, they don't even start this until, I forget, like 27, 28, 2027, 28, 29, 3 or 4 years from now. I don't know why they don't start it immediately. But I do believe people who can be working should be working. And I don't think people should go hungry in this country or homeless in this country, or we're a rich country who can afford to provide the financial assistance. But if you're going to get the assistance, you better do something to help yourself. And again, if you think I'm cold-hearted for saying that, I'm going to stick with that message because I don't think it's cold-hearted. I think it's good for everyone. It's good for society. It's good for the taxpayers. It's good for the American economy. And it's good for the people who are unemployed to get them into jobs. We've got a great show. I'm going to say one thing before we go to quick break. I think there are 3 flaws in the Republican bill that need to be fixed. Number one, we have to have the work requirements for all these government programs. They have to happen. Number 2, we have to cut the business tax rate to 15%. Trump has been talking about that for 9 years now. He ran for president on it. It's the one really strong pro-growth plan, and we could do it. If we do the 10% across the board tariffs, that would pay for it. And number 3, let's get rid of this green energy crap. Come on. I mean, look, this is a joke. Oil is at $60 a barrel. Natural gas is so cheap. We have plenty of energy in this country. We want to be the energy superpower, and it's not with windmills and solar panel, folks. It's old-fashioned oil, gas, and coal. It's making a big comeback. So why are we subsidizing all these crazy green energy programs? It's the Green New Deal. It's the EEOC formula for economic success. It's Pete Buttigieg economics, and it doesn't work. All right, we will be right back. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful weekend. This is one of those days. It's just great to be alive. I hope you feel the same way, and I'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on Saturday afternoon. We're on from 1 to 3 p.m. every Saturday. And I want to remind people to get the Unleash Prosperity hotline, which my next guest, Tom Phillipson, helps contribute to. And it is free. It costs you absolutely nothing. So come out, folks. Why have you not signed up for it? Just go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up for free, and you'll get our daily hotline, which, by the way, most of the members of Congress are reading it. I know my friends in the White House are reading it. I know that people at the Wall Street Journal and people at Fox News read it routinely. They get a lot of their storied ideas from the hotline. You can read it in 5 or 6 minutes every morning. So get it. It's just free. Just go to unleashprosperity.com, sign up for the hotline. It'll take about 4 or 5 days and you'll get it for free. And if you don't like it, by the way, you can just unsubscribe. But I think you will like it because we get so many kudos from people around the country saying this is one of the first things that I like to read in the morning. One of my friends said, "Hey, this is the caffeine, and this is a cup of caffeine in the morning." So I thought that was a sweet thing to say. Okay, before I bring in Tom Phillipson, I just want to mention one thing that I should have said at the outset. Read today's Wall Street Journal, folks. Read the editorial page, a wonderful, wonderful piece by my friend Alicia Finley, who interviewed the most important and influential economist alive today, Arthur Laffer, about the Laffer curve, about why cutting taxes is so important, why free market economics is the way to go. He shows, Laffer walks through, you got to read this because every single time he walks through the whole history of this, every time we've cut tax rates, the economy has done better. Every single time. That was true in the 1920s, 1960s, 1980s, and then when Trump came in. And one of the people who had a big, big effect on the Trump economics 1.0 was Tom Phillipson. Tom was the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. He is a professor of economics at the University of Chicago. That's where all the great economists come from. I think he has a number of other titles, author of a number of books. You see him on Fox News and in the Wall Street Journal all the time. Tom, thanks so much for joining this afternoon.
Great to be with you, Steve, as always.
So a lot I want to cover with you, Tom. I want to start with, what do you think about Art Laffer? And Art Laffer says cutting tax rates is good for the economy. What say you?
Yeah, I think he's definitely ahead of CBO, that's for sure. So CBO consistently always overestimates the revenue losses from tax cuts. That's a tradition at CBO, essentially. Right. And I don't think it's any different in the current negotiations that's taking place, essentially. That they can't recognize enough that the tax base increases when you cut tax rates, essentially. Tax revenues, the product of tax rates times the tax base. Mm-hmm. And whenever you basically not whenever, but many times when you lower tax rates, the tax base increases more, and therefore you get higher revenue. This occurred, for example, in 2017 when people were yelling that this is going to be a huge issue with the corporate tax cuts. It stimulated overall revenue collection, not necessarily on corporate taxes, but in the rest of the economy, the revenues rose essentially. So I don't see why it's so. Yep. I think it's a government disease to basically want to have revenue. That's why they're kind of clinging on to it like this, like they are at CBO.
Yeah, I agree totally. You and I both, you much more than myself, but we're in the Oval Office a lot with Donald Trump in his first term. You were one of his chief economists, and I would visit him once every 6 weeks or so there in the Oval Office. And so you got to see as much as anyone Donald Trump's economic thinking on the job, Tom, in his first term. Tell me if you don't mind. Tell me what you think about Trump's basic understanding of economics. He's more of a businessman than an economist, but he seems to just get it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, exactly. I was actually very, very positively impressed because obviously before you come in, you get the press version of Trump, which is completely false. Right. But it was actually amazing because many times when we argued, or debated in the Oval, he was way ahead of many advisors. Essentially, you give him a point, and he would run with that point very, very quickly, understand it much quicker than the rest of the room, and then have comments back on it. So that was very refreshing. I think. I mean, he was compared to other presidents, he's probably one of the most economically astute presidents we've had in many, many decades. Certainly, Biden was not very good on understanding economics. So,
well, the funny thing is,
even guys like Reagan, they haven't been in the private sector, and this guy's been there and been dealing with it on a daily basis. So I think that's partly where it's coming from.
I've always said that, that having a businessman in the White House makes a lot more sense if you want a good economy than having a politician in the White House. And I agree with you. I mean, I felt like Trump, he's not an economist, obviously. He's not a, PhD economist like you are, but he has, I call it common sense economics. He has common sense, and that puts him ahead of a lot of the other politicians. But it seemed like most of the time, I mean, sometimes I disagree with his policy decisions, but most of the time I really felt that his decisions on what to do on the economy just made sense.
And I also think economists many times have preconceived views on things, and his instincts are extremely good. He has very good instincts on what's good economic policy or not. And sometimes if you're trained in economics, you come in with a sort of a bias towards a particular topic from your training without seeing other angles of it. I would say tariffs are one of those where, for example, with China, right? So any economist would say tariffs are bad. We learned that in grad school, blah, 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 etc. But China is a completely different issue because they're an adversary and they're basically using tariffs to discipline people. That's not how we've been taught in economics to think about tariffs or as a negotiation tool, essentially. So it's a different perspective that he brings in many times from a business perspective, which is useful, which I think some economist friends of mine are just not getting. And then they kind of get it maybe half a year, 2 years later. Even Larry and I, kind of have
Larry Kudlow. You're talking about Larry Kudlow.
And then we came along a little bit afterwards,
Yeah. So that is a very good point. One of my heroes, and probably yours too, was Milton Friedman. And, Milton Friedman was what I'd call a unilateral free trader. He always said, we should be for free trade no matter what other countries are doing. But I wonder what he would think about Trump's idea of like, hey, we can force these other countries to lower their tariffs, and we may even have freer trade as a result of that kind of negotiation. But I've only got about 5 minutes left with you. I'm talking to Tom Philipson, who was a chief economist for Donald Trump in his first term. I wanted to, one of the issues that I disagree with Donald Trump on is this idea of the price controls on drugs. And I'm worried about this, Tom, because I think we need to always be at the forefront of drug R&D and innovation. We want to see as quickly as possible cures for cancer and heart disease and MS and all these other terrible things. So Trump says, look, the system is unfair to Americans. And to some extent, he is right. It's not fair that we pay more for the drugs that we develop in the United States than other countries. But I'm not sure drug price controls are the right thing to do. But I'd love, you're an expert on this. What's the right solution here?
Yeah, so as a background, it turns out that prescription drugs, so this sounds weird when you say it, but they're actually not more expensive in the U.S. And the reason is because prescription drugs are 91% generics, and we have the lowest prices of generics anywhere. So for 91% of prescriptions, U.S. citizen gets lower prices relative to other countries. Obviously, we have higher brand prices, but if you incorporate that and the fact that other countries don't use generics as much and they're also using more expensive generics.
Most of the drugs are generics, right?
Yeah, exactly. 91% of prescriptions are generics. So basically, 90% of the time you're getting a cheaper price in the U.S. compared to other countries. So that's a backdrop why price controls in the U.S. are a little bit misleading, I think. And I think he's kind of in between here because he realizes there's a free riding problem. U.S. provides roughly 70% of earnings for biomedical innovation in the world, even though we're 24% of global GDP or something.
Right.
So we are overrepresented, and because we have free market pricing, not in Medicare and Medicaid, but outside in the commercial markets, in labor markets, we have free market pricing that supports innovation anywhere in the world. Essentially, they innovate. Novo Nordisk has the big Ozempic obesity drug. They're not innovating for Danes in Denmark. They're a Danish company. They're innovating for the U.S. market. So the whole global innovation machinery is set up or it essentially works just because U.S. pays the lion's shares of the returns to that innovation. So then the price controls that both the Democrats with the Inflation Reduction Act and now the what's called most favored nation pricing, meaning U.S. should not pay more than other countries, I think it's going to backfire because that's going to increase free riding in my opinion.
Well, how so?
As opposed to because once a company, let's say a given company has U.S., they're never going to sacrifice their U.S. market and have, foreign prices come down, or U.S. prices, come down to foreign prices. Suppose they charge 100 in the U.S. and 50 in Canada. Canada is like 5% of the U.S. sales or something in drugs.
Right.
They're never going to go down to 50 in Canada to satisfy, not selling more expensive in the U.S.
So what are they going to do?
They're going to try to force Canada to come up to the U.S. price. Canada will not come up to the 100, essentially. And then the company is going to find it in their interest to leave the country to not have to deal with satisfying the Canadian price in the U.S. Once they leave the country, Canada has an open ticket to basically compulsory license the drug. You're not selling in our country. You refuse to sell in our country. That just means there's a smaller global market for these companies, and they're going to have more free riding as opposed to less free riding because they're never going to go out and the key is they're never going to sacrifice their lucrative U.S. market by pricing down to less lucrative markets. Yeah. So they're going to try to force those other countries up, and they're going to refuse, and then they have a blank ticket to do whatever they want.
So we've only got a minute left, Tom, but I wanted to ask you this. So just let's come to the conclusion of this because this is a great analysis you're providing. So it sounds to me like this has to be part of these trade negotiations with these countries, that you're not going to rip off our drugs.
And we should have. I have argued, and I have a piece coming out in National Review this week that basically says we should have the same NATO-type agreement on a percent of GDP that gets spent on brand name drugs in a country if they want to get access to U.S. drugs. Or we can have whatever sticks we want in that trade agreement. It could be tariffs or whatever, but it should be a stick that gets kicked in if they don't spend, a certain percent of their GDP on innovation or brand name innovation and basically try to free ride. It's in their interest to free ride because they're so small that they don't suffer in innovation when they have price control. So, Sweden, even if we didn't have Sweden at all, nothing would happen to innovation. So if they have price controls, they see the same flow of drugs. So it's in their interest to free ride. That's why they're doing it. But we should have trade agreements that there's some penalty for that free riding if they're not living up to a certain percent of GDP spent on brand name drugs.
I like that solution a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense. I hope that's where we end up because, look, we are the leader in innovation in drugs, and all these incredible life-saving drugs have almost all of them come from the United States. We want to remain number one on that, but the other countries have to pay their fair share. That's Tom Philipson. Tom, thanks for joining. We'll be right back, folks, with Newt Gingrich to talk about what's going on with this unbelievable budget deal.
It's time to rewrite the vacation rules. With Royal Caribbean, your family can look forward to just about anything. Break the thrill barrier, roaring down the tallest water slide in North America. Jump into breathtaking jungles and jaw-dropping coves. Vibe off the charts on our private island Perfect Day at Coco Cay. And end the day knowing things are just getting started. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Custom window treatments are a small upgrade that have a big impact. No better time to shop than now at Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega sale. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega sale now. Save up to 50% site-wide, plus a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC and affiliates throughout the country. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. It's a beautiful weekend all over the country. So I hope you're having a eventful Saturday, and thanks for tuning in. So I told you that we would have Speaker Newt Gingrich on, and I'm just so honored to call him a friend. I admire so much what he has done for the country, as I know you all do. He was Speaker of the House for the first time as a Republican for, 40 years or something like that. He was the leader of the Republican Revolution in the early 1990s, which I think was the second phase of the Reagan Revolution. Mr. Speaker, the way I like to put it is there was the Reagan Revolution in the 80s, and then the Newt Gingrich Republican Revolution of the 90s, and now we have the Donald Trump Revolution that we're in the midst of right now. So first of all, thanks for joining. And I want to start with this question. I know I've asked you this before, but I think it's so important. When you came into the speakership, we were running massive deficits. We've been running deficits for 25 years. Everyone said it was impossible to balance the budget. I thought it was impossible to balance the budget. You did it in 3 or 4 years, which was I think kind of a miracle. And can you just very quickly for us summarize how you were able to defy all the odds and get that budget balanced?
Well, I think first of all, you're exactly right that we stood on Ronald Reagan's shoulders, and virtually everything in the contract with America came out of Ronald Reagan. We combined, I think, a couple of things. One was tax cuts and deregulation to dramatically accelerate economic growth.
Right.
You look at the Dow Jones when I went in, and 4 years later, it was astonishing how big the economic growth was.
Yes.
Which was, by the way, something that also happened with Reagan. When the tax cuts finally hit, I think Larry Kudlow said that there was 15% growth in one quarter. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So part of it is we had tremendous economic growth. We were very tough on spending. We reformed welfare. We reformed Medicare. And it was that combination, I'd say, of tax cuts, deregulation,
right,
real and then genuine spending cuts, all of which, by the way, the current big, beautiful bill that Trump is in favor of, which I would call the Make America Affordable Again Act, because I think average people really want to be able to go to work and have enough take-home pay that they can, go out and shop without having to worry. And I think that we're very close to getting a bill. And I think that, candidly, the chart you sent me showing the impact of economic growth on the budget is exactly the right direction. Kevin Hassett had commented that, basically, these are my words, not his, but basically the Congressional Budget Office just deliberately undermined Trump by scoring economic growth at a level that's absurd. I think it was like 1.8%. I think he'll be somewhere between 3 and 4. And frankly, if he has very many weeks like last week, where he got literally between 3 countries, he got $1 trillion in the sale of American products and $1 trillion in commitments for capital investment in the United States. You have very many weeks like that, and you have the tax cuts and the deregulation in the bill that's currently in the Congress. You're going to get extraordinary economic growth.
I couldn't agree more. And the reason I would ask you about what happened in those mid-'90s years to the late 90s, that you were the captain of the team then, was that I recall that at that period when you were putting those budgets together, you were so savagely criticized. Oh my gosh, poor people are going to lose their benefits, and throw widows and orphans on the street and all of that kind of thing. So, and I mention that because that's what we're hearing right now. Once again, it's the same.
And frankly, they're all lies. I mean,
I know.
It was very funny. The other day, the Democrats in the Energy and Commerce Committee held up the pictures of people that they said were going to be cut off of Medicaid, and everybody they were holding up was either young or had a disability, and none of those people are affected. The people being cut off Medicaid are either illegal immigrants or able-bodied adults who refuse to work. So, now,
amazing.
They also, frankly, go after people who are cheating, because we have estimates from the Government Accounting Office that there are trillions of dollars stolen over the course of a decade in the Medicaid program. And I think it's fair to say I'm against paying crooks. Now, I know it's bold, out on the edge, and I'm sure some liberal Democrats will be incensed at the idea that we should only pay honest people. But that's a debate I look forward to.
So all of these ideas that we're talking about, and most of the ideas, maybe not every one of them, but most of the ideas that are in the Republican budget are popular with the American public. Americans do want the Trump tax cuts extended. I saw a poll 65%, even almost a majority of Democrats want that. Most Americans do believe in common sense welfare reform, where if you're going to get benefits from the government, you have to either be looking for a job or in a job if you're capable of working. Most Americans agree that lowering taxes is good for the economy. Most Americans are outraged by the fraud in these programs. And you're quite right, Mr. Speaker, that if these are the government's own auditors, by the way, this isn't me speaking or you speaking. These are the government's own auditors that say almost $500 billion a year is being ripped off from these programs. And I don't understand why it is that stopping the fraud is somehow hurting people. I mean, this is something that most Americans think is common sense.
Yeah, I think one of the things that leads to timidity is Republicans just aren't used to debating. They hide. And the fact is, we will win this. I saw Robert F. Kennedy today in one of the hearings just tore into the Democrats and went exactly down the line we're talking about. He said, what we're doing is going after, first of all, people who are legal immigrants. Second, people who are able-bodied and should be working. And third, crooks who have been stealing from the system. Now, I'd be happy to go into any Democratic district and debate that not taking your tax money to give to illegal immigrants, crooks, or able-bodied adults who refuse to work. And you're exactly right. In every case, it's better than 2-1 in favor of what the Republicans are doing, despite the bias of the propaganda media.
And we also know, by the way, from what you guys did, I keep hearkening back to what you guys did in 95, 96, 97, that period, because, again, this is an instant replay, folks, of what happened, I don't know, some 20 years ago. And what I think is so interesting about this is, remember, people said, oh, if you pass the Newt Gingrich budget, Republicans are going to lose the Congress, remember? And you held the House, right?
We became two key facts, and these are facts, not theories. We became the first re-elected House Republican majority since 1928.
Wow!
And
amazing.
And in the process, the only 4 consecutive balanced budgets in the last 100 years.
Right.
So when people tell me it can't be done, I think it is vital for the House to finish passing this bill before Memorial Day, exactly as Speaker Johnson has been trying. I think it is vital that the Senate get the bill out within 2 or 3 weeks, go to conference, and get the final bill on Trump's desk by July 4th. If that happens, and I've written about this at Gingrich 360, you will have a Trump boom next year. I mean, you'll have an astonishing economy.
Oh, I read your piece. I thought was outstanding, and I think great minds think alike. Because Larry Kudlow and I both totally agree with you that if we got to get the tax bill done, we got to get the trade deals done, and then I think you see a big boom. Just like, by the way, you had a boom when you fixed things. I mean, the economy in the late 1990s and the stock market went on a boom just like that. I wanted to ask you, if I could, sir, about the you saw what happened obviously yesterday with the House budget. Some of the Republican conservatives, some of my best friends in the Congress, voted that bill down. I think that maybe they have a point. I think there are some defects in the current bill, and I think it can be improved. And I wanted to mention 2 or 3 things and get your reaction to this, if I may. Number one, I do believe that Chip Roy and some of his, conservative allies are right, that I think we're not tough enough on some of the, for example, like the Medicaid reforms don't even kick in for another 3 or 4 years and so on. And I'm frustrated by that. And do you think he has a point on that one?
Well, look, the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act was signed into law on August 22nd, 1996. It went into effect on October 1st. And the section that involved families with children had until January 1st, 1997. There's zero reason to take 2 or 3 or 4 years to implement these things.
Yes,
and frankly,
I agree.
If the Republican leadership will simply take the model that we did in '96 and apply it, they'll find the savings to make all the fiscal conservatives happy while doing something which everybody in the country thinks should be done.
And to add that, I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I just want to remind our listeners that when you did that, we had the biggest reduction in welfare caseloads, I think, in American history. And I think all the studies show that the vast majority of those people actually saw an improvement in their life. They saw an improvement in their incomes because they got jobs.
Well, it's the largest improvement in children in poverty in American history because exactly that. Their parents went to work, their incomes went up. And by the way, the children learned that it's okay to get up on Monday and go to work, which is really important. If you want to break a cycle of poverty, you've got to have a parent who's working.
Yes.
And Ronald Reagan used to say the greatest social program is a job. And I think that's true. And so I'm totally with you. And I think that Chip Roy and the others, if they could get the starting time, and I actually don't understand why they accepted the idea that it would take so long to implement. Certainly by January 1 of '97, at the very, very latest, they could implement. And I think that gets billions of dollars.
That they think somehow this is going to reduce the complaints and all the, Republicans are cutting Medicaid, but they're going to say that anyway.
Yeah. I didn't understand why they did it. And I think I was told they did it because they had asked some of the states how long it would take to implement. And of course, the states promptly gave them the most bureaucratic possible answer. But that's why I went back. I asked one of the folks on my team to go back, pull up the actual dates that we did. And it was almost instantaneous because, you send a clear, simple message. Get this done or you lose the money.
So so I think you and I agree on that. The second issue that I'm concerned about is this issue that's been debated about for a number of years, the SALT deduction, the state and local tax deduction. And by the way, this is a flagship New York station. So many of the people who are listening to the show live in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, 3 of the bluest states in the country. But when I was one of the people who insisted in the first bill in 2017 that we get rid of the state and local tax deduction, because I don't think people in Texas should have to pay more taxes to subsidize people in California and New York, but that's just my own view. But we offered $20,000. We increased the exemption from $10,000 to $20,000, and that was supposed to be the deal. And then they said no. With some of these Republicans, that's not enough. So then we said, all right, look, we'll take it from 20 to 30. And then they still weren't happy with it. And now we're just talking about, now they want to increase to $50,000, $100,000, which just basically essentially brings back the state and local tax deduction, which just encourages these blue states, Mr. Speaker, to raise their taxes.
Yeah. Bismarck once said that politics is the art of the possible. From Johnson's standpoint, because we have such a small majority, he has to get those votes.
Yes.
If the cost of getting an extraordinary bill is doing something that's moderately stupid, because in their minds, I happen to think they're wrong, but in their minds, they believe this is the margin of their reelection. You may not remember this, but because we knew nobody had been reelected since 1928. So we were really careful in 1995, 96, because we didn't just want to win once. We wanted to change the whole power structure of Washington. So the unions went after us for a minimum wage increase. And we had 23 districts where the members felt that if they didn't at least get a vote on it, that they would just get defeated. And one of the great moments of leadership I've ever seen, Majority Leader Dick Armey got up and he said, look, I'm an economics professor. I ran for Congress because I hate the minimum wage. It's terrible. I think it's totally wrong. And I want you to know that as majority leader, I am scheduling a vote on behalf of our majority, which I will vigorously oppose on the floor as the member from Texas. And it was the art of the possible. It was not, I don't think it was a good idea, but it was a necessary idea to keep the majority. And so if they have to cut some fairly stupid deal, which you and I both agree is wrong, but it gets them the votes necessary. Mm-hmm. And if they can combine that with moving up the dates on welfare reform and workfare in Medicaid so everybody on the right can feel good, and we can actually get the bill passed so the Senate we can then put pressure on the Senate to pass their version. I'm 100% for it because it's the art of the possible. It's practical,
the art of the deal.
And it has to be
So
done.
we only have 1 minute left. So I just, in closing, Mr. Speaker, how confident are you that this is going to get done? Are we going to get it done, do you think, by, I'd like to see, I used to say Memorial Day, but now I take 4th of July. But I think it's urgent that we get this done and that there's some, that people know what's going to happen with the tax code. How, are you confident that we're going to get this done?
Well, I'm 99% confident it will get done. I am 70% confident it'll get done by July 4th. And I would just say all of our listeners, if you want to boom next year in a great economy, call your congressman and call your senators and tell them, you expect them to vote to get this thing done.
Yep. That's Speaker Newt Gingrich, one of the American heroes of the last 50 years. Mr. Speaker, thanks so much for joining. This is the More Money Show. And folks, we will now hear from two of the best in the business about how to protect your financial future.
Hey, it's Ryan Payne and Bob Payne from Payne Capital Management. Coming to every week on the More Money Show, talking about the markets, the economy, your retirement, and Bob, another fantastic week on the Street of Dreams. Lots of green on the screen. As you like to say, bull markets, man, they're just way more fun than bear markets.
I'll tell you what, up is better than down. We had a pretty crazy month in April with the 5% moves almost on a daily basis, but here we are. We're looking at all-time record highs pretty soon.
And it's like sentiment can change on a dime. And it just amazes me how quickly everyone can go from bearish to bullish. And conditions can change, right? With all these tariffs, we felt like the economy was falling off a cliff. We felt this trade war was going to go on forever. Now it's all about trade deals, right?
Well, as we've been saying the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of headwinds that turn into tailwinds, right? Suddenly oil is a lot less expensive. It's been coming down through this whole decline in the stock market. And now interest rates look like they're starting to come down because we had really good news on the inflation numbers that came out this week, right? With CPI and PPI. Again, markets, give you unexpected moves because these moves are unexpected.
Yeah, exactly right. All after 50 years in the business, I like that's your sage wisdom. That's pretty good. And I think, look, the other thing too to remind yourself is you got to spread that money out. Foot Locker, go figure. I don't remember the last time you shopped at a Foot Locker, but that stock was up almost 80% in one day. But then on the other hand, United Healthcare with all these lawsuits dropped like a rock. So, it can be treacherous out there, especially when you look at individual stocks. It's a really hard game to play because you never know what's going to move the market.
And that's the ultimate conundrum, right? It's why our industry, at least the media, the financial media, makes it so difficult for everyone to be a great investor because, no market has ever gone to zero, but plenty of individual companies have. And that's the treachery of trying to trade individual stocks. And that's all they promote on national TV is, I bought this, I sold that. That's not investing, that's gambling. You go to casinos in Atlantic City if you want to gamble.
At least they give you free drinks, Bob. So that's the other component to that. But no, I think, more than ever right now, if anything, you really have to start thinking about not only, hey, the world doesn't end very often, as we talk about almost every single week, right? We have low unemployment, people have jobs, wages are going up. And as you mentioned, inflation's coming down. But it's about growth in your portfolio so you can live off that growth, but it's also about protecting the downside. And, we talk about this probably ad nauseum, but it is an art, finding that balance between what's too much risk, what's not enough risk. And again, building as much certainty into your own situation you possibly can, because let's face it, the world's always uncertain.
Well, I've always said in the past, right, that investing is an art and a science, right? There's obviously a science to it. You can look at the numbers, you can look at forecasts, you can see how the economy is doing. But, the market doesn't always respond to the same numbers the same way. And that's the art of being a great investor, is making sure that you don't view diversification as diversification. There's so many concentrated portfolios today in a handful of stocks. That's not investing. Again, that's gambling. And the opportunities to diversify today, I'll tell you what, it's never been greater and never been a better opportunity now to spread your wealth around the world.
That's a really good point. It's the best time to build, I would call, certainty into your portfolio, right? I mean, look, let's face it. Interest rates have come up a lot over the last couple of years. We're at a 15-year high in interest rates. What a great time to lock into bonds. In fact, even if you're in a low tax bracket right now, owning a tax-free bond portfolio can work really well. The yields on tax-free bonds versus taxable bonds have become very attractive. If you're looking to invest in the stock market, right? If you look at different areas of the stock market, whether it's dividend-paying stocks, real estate investment trusts, energy pipelines, where there's so many places that have yields that are so attractive that we're finding about for a lot of the people that we're building portfolios for is we can subsidize their lifestyle just with the income on the portfolio. If it's structured properly, that's a better bet than having to bet on growth every year.
Well, that's what breaks my heart, Rye, that everyone hasn't sat down with us so we can review what they're doing, because lower taxes and lower fees equal higher returns. There was just a study done in the Wall Street Journal that, the investment industry has stopped decreasing their costs, their fees, right? The mutual fund industry was trying to catch up with the indexing that was going on, and they just stopped. They said, oh, you know what? We're worth more money. Well, they're not. And so you want to make sure that not only are you not paying the taxes that are unnecessary, you're not paying unnecessary fees.
And we say this every week, right? But it's not what you make, it's what you take, right? It's not about the return you get, but it's what you actually take home into your pocket after you pay taxes. And a lot of people had that surprise this past year because money market funds went up a lot, right? So if you're getting 5% on a money market fund, well, when tax time came around, I had people saying, oh my God, I owe all these taxes. Where did I generate all this income? Well, I'm like, well, in that taxable money market fund that you own, well, the federal government still wants theirs. So, the real analysis you want to run is not only just what income do I need, but how do I generate it on an after-tax basis? And this is one of the reasons why I don't like annuities. Because when you take an annuity income stream, you're paying the full boat on it. You're paying full federal income tax and state.
You don't want a temporary portfolio. You don't want a portfolio that is good right now, because the world doesn't stand still. The biggest tax you have to worry about is that insidious hidden tax of inflation. Your cost of living is going higher. Even though oil prices are lower, your cost of living is still going to go up. And you want to make sure that you have hedges against inflation. And it's not a money market fund. It's not an annuity. And it certainly isn't these special products in private equity that Wall Street's so excited about, because they're making a killing, at least for them, not for the investors.
Well, it's a great point. It's not just about an after-tax income stream, but that's one that actually adjusts with inflation over time, right? Because when you turn on Social Security or you turn on an annuity, it's the same amount of money you're going to receive every year. Now, Social Security does have a small hike up, but I suspect that doesn't really keep up with inflation. But building a portfolio where the income actually grows over time to factor in inflation is a huge component to that. And I think you made another really good point here, is you really have to understand what are the total costs on your portfolio. Because you're right, Wall Street loves to hide the costs, the hidden costs in the portfolio, and they're getting lazier about it, or greedier is probably the right word. So really getting an understand what your total cost structure is something that's more important than ever, because that all adds to the bottom line. If that's money going in Wall Street's pocket that go into your pocket for retirement, that can have an impact of like hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. And we love to run that analysis. We love to show you where Wall Street is taking advantage of you, and you need to know.
Everybody keeps saying that inflation is moderating, but you got to remember, we just had a 20% jump in the cost of living over the last 4 or 5 years. So you can't afford to have a fixed income portfolio. You need an increasing income portfolio. That means you have to invest in different things, not just what you're used to in the past.
Yeah, Bob, it comes down to 3 things, right? What are the overall fees you're paying? What are you paying in taxes, and what kind of income money you're generating on your portfolio? And if you're thinking to yourself right now, Bob and Ryan, I get it. I know I need to figure these things out. Well, here's your shot to do it. We leave 10 slots open for the entire show. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, Bob and I will run for you our now famous Total Financial Master Plan, and we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. There's not a firm out there that will do this work up front. We're going to go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We'll give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life. We're going to hone in on every financial issue you need to address today, whether it's that income plan for retirement. How do you take Social Security? How do you draw from your portfolio? How do you factor in inflation? We're going to give you a dynamic income plan so you don't run out of money. We're going to look at diversification. Markets have been wild the last couple of weeks. I don't need to tell you. Has your portfolio been up and down like a yo-yo? Or have you been sitting in cash, money market funds, CDs, paralysis by analysis? We're going to give you a full investment game plan. We're going to tie it to your goals. We're going to show you how to grow your wealth, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to tell you high cost, tax inefficient products like annuities, mutual funds, structured products, brokerage products. We will do a deep dive of every investment you own. We'll show you how to reduce the cost and optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make, it's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We've got 10 slots.
All you have to do is text or call 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or you can just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC. If you're one of our next 10 callers, you've saved over $1 million for your retirement. Our team of financial advisors and certified financial planners will help you to achieve your total financial master plan. Now, there's no obligation. There's no cost. There's no other firm in the city that likes to even consider doing this for you up front at no cost. But you won't have a plan either if you don't text or call right now at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC.
Hey, if you learn more about myself and Bob and our firm, Payne Capital Management, of course, that's Payne, simply go to BeBullish.com. That's BeBullish.com. Stay tuned. We got more money coming your way.
You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Steve Moore, and that is Can't Buy Me Love by the Beatles. As you know, the theme song of the More Money Show is Money by the Beatles. But, some people were saying, well, wait a minute, money can't buy you love. So I'm going to have to ask my next guest, David Asman, if money can buy you love. What I want is love and money. That's what I'm trying to get for you folks. Love and money. Anyway, we're having fun. I hope you're having a great afternoon. It is absolutely glorious day. So you have to get out after the More Money Show is over and get out and enjoy the sunshine and the blue skies and the balmy breezes. It's one of those days you're just happy to be alive. So thanks for joining, folks. David Asman of Fox News, and you know him from Wall Street Journal and other places, will be joining me in a minute. He's one of my great allies in this fight for prosperity. But I wanted to mention one quick thing before I get to, a couple of quick things before I get to David. Number one, please, folks, get today's Wall Street Journal. I think probably a lot of you subscribe to it, but if you don't, just go down and buy a copy of today's edition, the weekend edition. It is spectacular, and there is a wonderful, long biographical story, almost a full page, about one of my mentors and one of my best friends, Arthur Laffer, who I believe should win a Nobel Prize in economics. There's no question. It's inarguable that he has had more impact on policy and creating prosperity, not just in the United States and not just in the states around the country, but also all over the world, than Arthur Laffer. And it is laughable. It is a joke that the Nobel Prize Committee has not yet given Arthur Laffer the Nobel Prize, because he is no one alive even comes close to Arthur Laffer in terms of the impact that he has had on the way we think about economics and in creating prosperity for people around the world. So read that book, read that article. What he says in here, and he's got the evidence to prove it, and I'm going to talk with David Asman about this in a minute. Every time that and I've said this so many times on the show, you're probably tired, folks, of having me say it. Every time we cut tax rates in the last 100 years, and that was true in the 1920s under Calvin Coolidge. It was true in the 1980s or 60s under John F. Kennedy, who I seem to recall was a Democrat, and in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, and in Donald Trump's first term from 2017 to 2020. Every time we cut tax rates, good things have happened to the economy, period. End of argument. So let's keep cutting tax rates, because the economy flourishes when the tax rates come down. And there's too many Republicans even who do not understand that argument. It used to be, by the way, when I first came to Washington in the early mid-1980s, that a lot of Democrats understood that. The low tax rates are good for the economy. These were the old John F. Kennedy Democrats. I don't think there are any Democrats today, not in Congress, that actually believe in the power of lowering tax rates. As Larry Kudlow would say, when you tax something, you get less of it. That's very simple. That's the same reason. Why do we tax cigarettes? Because we want people to smoke less. Well, then why would we tax people for working and investing and starting businesses? You're going to get less of it. And when you tax something less, you're going to get more of it. And that is the lesson that we learned from Adam Smith, and we learned from Arthur Laffer, and we learned from people like David Asman. So, David, you're one of my heroes. You do an amazing job on Fox News, and I think we first met you when you were at the Wall Street Journal. So, thank you so much for joining this afternoon.
My pleasure. My pleasure. By the way,
okay.
one perfect example of the people who don't get that simple axiom that the more you tax something, the less you get, is Governor Newsom. Just announced, I think it was earlier this week, James Freeman reported it in the Wall Street Journal, a tax on tourists in California to increase tourism. I mean, it was just perfect example of how they don't get it. I mean, a tax on tourism is going to lessen tax, but he has a tax on tourism to increase tourism. They absolutely have the complete opposite understanding that JFK had as a Democrat who really did get the incentive issue in economics. These guys just don't get it at all. And as you say, too many Republicans don't get it either.
And I think one of the problems, David, is that there is a difference between an average tax rate and what you pay at the margin. This is one of Arthur Laffer's great insights, that what matters most is what you pay on the last hour that you work, or the last hour that you last dollar that you earn. And if you raise those, I mean, it's hard to believe, David, you know this, but people are going to be shocked to hear this, but there was a point in the United States where the highest tax rate was, I think, 91%. Which means, like, why would anyone pay a 91% tax rate? Why would, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, the big fight that we have now in the Republican Party is among those few Republicans who really don't get the idea of incentives and taxes, and they continue to say that if you have a tax reduction. Tax rate reduction. We should emphasize rate. It's a tax rate reduction because if you have that, you can increase the economic activity. That means more people are working, they're working more hours, particularly if we get this tax exemption on overtime pay, which is a great idea by Trump. And too many people in Washington think you have to pay for that, and you have to pay for it with other things that are going to make it much more difficult for this bill to pass. I mean, it's crazy. I understand. There are people like Chip Roy who was on the Budget Committee and voted against it being passed out of committee on Friday. That's why they have to work this weekend. Hopefully he'll come back and change his mind on Sunday night. But a lot of what he's talking about, I agree with.
Me too.
We shouldn't
Me too, David.
wait on that Medicaid, having not giving Medicaid to illegal migrants, not giving Medicaid to young, strong working men who could go out and get a job and get insurance with that job.
Right.
We shouldn't have to wait until 2029, which is the bill is now written, for that to kick in. It should kick in immediately, and I think he should get that. Also, questioning about why we're retaining all this Biden Green New Deal stuff that's loaded in there. So he makes good points, but he doesn't understand in pricing out the cost of this bill that they're coming out with, that you don't have to put in these trillions of dollars extra that you have to leave, because that's how much the tax cuts are going to cost. The tax rate cuts are not going to cost money. They're going to bring in more revenue by lifting, as JFK said, rising tide lifts all boats. And that's exactly what happened in all those cases you mentioned before.
Well put. By the way, you recognize that voice, folks. That's David Asman from Fox News, who is one of the best economic voices in the country. So I find myself, David, at first I was kind of angry at Chip Roy for voting, and he had 4 or 5 other Republicans who brought this bill down. But I've kind of come around maybe to his way of thinking. I think this bill can be improved. I think we can do better than this. And prior to having you on, David, I had Newt Gingrich on, who reminded me that they did the welfare reforms in 1995, 1996. Which had work requirements, and those were a spectacular success. In fact, the people were every study, even the Brookings Institute, which is a pretty liberal group, said this actually worked. We reduced the welfare rolls by 70%, and people tracked what happened to the folks who lost welfare benefits but went into work. They were better off, David, because started to climb the economic ladder.
The poverty rate went down. Went down. That is, more people were incentivized to go out to work. Again, we're not talking about, sick, lame folks who are, pregnant and have to take care of 5 kids. No, we're talking about people who can go out and work, but who are not, because they're willing to live a little worse off just to get something for free, even though they can go out and work for it. And when you incentivize people to do that by saying you're not going to get these freebies unless you go out and work, because we know you can go out and work, then they are motivated to go out and work. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, not just a little bit, a lot. Millions of people left the welfare rolls. The poverty rate went down significantly, not just a tiny little smidgen, but significantly. I mean, it helped everybody in that sense. And it was particularly helpful for the poverty level of kids, because the parents were incentivized to go. Both of the parents were incentivized to work harder. And what do you spend money on when you have kids? If you're a responsible person, I think most people that have kids are, most people, not all. But those people who are incentivized to work harder to get their kids more, and the level of childhood poverty went down. So in all cases, it was successful.
Yep. No, it's so, and what's so frustrating is that happened roughly 20 years ago. So we have the evidence; it's clear, it's inarguable. You were exactly right, my friend, on all of those statistics. And yet here we are 20 years later, and the left is making exactly the same arguments they made 20 years ago. Even every single one of them was refuted by real life. I said earlier on the show that my friend, Dick Armey used to say, he was one of my mentors. Remember, he was the House Majority Leader and an economist, and he used to say, "I don't need faith, I have evidence." We have evidence.
The other thing is, I have to give credit to somebody I don't usually give credit to, but Bill Clinton went against the left wing of not only his party, but of his cabinet. There were members of his cabinet, like Donna Shalala, who I believe was the head of Health and Human Services. She said, "I'm gonna quit if you do this." Well, he said, I'm sorry, but you got to quit then. And of course, she didn't, even though he did pass the workfare bill with Newt Gingrich. But the point is that he went against all the left-wing naysayers in order to do that. Now, is there a single Democrat, maybe John Fetterman, maybe John Fetterman in the Senate would understand something like this, but there's so few. I mean, there were few enough back when Clinton was president, but there's so few now. Maybe as they understand that they're sinking even further into the polls. What's their approval rating now is like 20% nationwide for Democrats in general. It's like 45% for approval rate for Trump. So they're just doing terribly with this radical left-wing stuff. But the bottom line is it doesn't work. Clinton understood that. Of course, Newt did. They worked together and brought it to fruition. I don't want it to kill this bill. We can't afford to have tax increases.
I don't think it will, David. I agree. Look, there's nobody who wants this bill passed, signed, sealed, and delivered more than me, except maybe you. But we both completely agree. But I do think, we're going to have some negotiations in the next few days. I think most people are looking at what Chip Roy is talking about and say, hey, this makes sense. Let's make these changes and let's move forward with it. He also wants to get rid of some. Why in the world are Republicans keeping half of these Green New Deal initiatives?
I don't know.
I can't even understand it. Yeah.
Well, the answer is that, and we all know that, and everybody listening knows that. The answer is that somebody among their constituents is getting some money from it, and they don't want to ruffle the feathers of the people who are the small minority of people who are getting some kind of contracts from it. That's the only explanation I have. And whether they're Republicans or Democrats, the most important thing in their lives is getting reelected.
So one other quick issue I wanted to talk to you about, David, and I appreciate you taking some time out on your Saturday afternoon to discuss this, is I'm a big fan of this 15% corporate rate. And, from the first time that Larry Kudlow and I sat down with Donald Trump in January of 2016, so what was that? A long time ago, so 9 years ago. I mean, he was saying, I want a 15% corporate rate. And we did not get the 15% corporate rate in the 2017 bill. We did get it down all the way from 35% to 21%, which was a huge improvement. But he ran for president saying, I want to cut the rate to 15%. The American public are behind that. They, instinctively, this is what's so interesting, it's just a side point. Americans kind of understand the Laffer curve. They kind of get it. If you tax something, you're going to get less of it. And so why can't the politicians get that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. And what I think you're referring to is the disappearing act at the 15% flat rate for
I know. So why isn't that in this bill?
It just disappeared in the bill. They claim Jason Smith, who's the head of House Ways and Means, that's the committee that actually writes this stuff. He claims that they have this effective rate of 15%, but
I don't like that.
It's going back to all these, deductions and the special interest.
Yeah, I hate that.
That's
not the right way to do it.
No, it's not. It's not at all. It's not clear. So the bottom line is it's got to pass. If this one big beautiful bill doesn't pass, I think there have only been 4 years since 1980 when you've had more than one reconciliation bill passed. So if people like Ron Johnson, the senator who said he wants 3 bills, reconciliation bills before the end of the year, and taxes would be the last one, he's playing with fire, because if on December 31st, on midnight of January 1st, 2026, taxes go up for everybody, and that essentially means that Republicans lose badly in the midterms and probably lose the majority in the House and the Senate, and we're going to have impeachments every week of Donald Trump's last two years. That's the only thing that Congress is going to be doing. So we need that first and foremost. But having said that, if there's a way to get these really critical things, particularly that Medicaid bill, not delaying it until 2029, but putting it into existence right away, getting rid of some of the neat Green New Deal crap that's in there, and this 15% flat rate for business, which Donald Trump talked about for those businesses that do put things together in this country rather than in others that
there
don't
you go.
outsource.
Well, David, that's why I wanted you on the show, because you and I completely agree. So I appreciate it. That's David Asman from Fox News. He was brought up at the Wall Street Journal and was one of the top economics writers there. And so, David, thanks so much for coming on this afternoon. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. I want to remind you, please sign up for the More Money hotline that you can get from unleashprosperity.com and just go, and it's free. It costs you nothing. I'm not selling you anything. Just if you want to be the smartest person in the room when you're talking about politics or the economy or finances, get the Unleash Prosperity Now, what we call our hotline, and get it. It's free. It costs nothing. And people love it, and I think you will too. And if you don't like it, you can just unsubscribe. So sign up for that. Go to the website. Also, I always so much appreciate getting mail from folks all week based on what I say on the show. Some people don't like what I say. Some people do like it. But I love to get your reactions, and I learn a lot from hearing from you. So don't hesitate to email me if you'd like to steve@unleashprosperitynow.com. That's steve@unleashprosperitynow.com. Let me know what you think. And we will be getting to your calls. We are live. We are in color, one of the few radio programs that you're listening to today that is live and in color, and we take your calls. And most of the other stations, you wouldn't want to change the station because all you're going to listen to is boring canned commercials and things like that. We don't do that. We're live. I'm lucky to follow 3 hours of Larry Kudlow. You have 5 hours on WABC of live economic finance coverage. Nowhere else in the country do you get that. And I know, by the way, many of you are listening on other affiliated stations throughout the country and always appreciate that. So the question of the day when I take your calls, which I will in a few minutes, 1-800-848-9222. I'm going to say that again. 1-800-848-9222. And my question for you is, what do you think about the Republican tax bill? Do you think that people like Chip Roy, who's a friend of mine from Texas, who voted to bring this bill down because he didn't think it cut spending enough? I tend to agree with them on that, but I want your perspective on this tax bill. And if you're a Democrat or a liberal and you don't like the bill, call me. Tell me why this is your chance to voice your opinion on this. This is freedom of speech radio. We like to hear from people who may not disagree with me. Even my wife disagrees with me most of the time. So I think I'd love to hear from Democrats. I'd love to hear from people who do agree with me. I especially like it when people agree with me. But also, I love to hear from the ladies. I think I just enjoy hearing the woman's perspective on these issues, because I actually think women are the ones most in tune with the finances of the families. I don't want to sound old-fashioned here, but I know in my family, I don't really even pay attention to my family's finances, but boy, my wife sure does. That's why I love her. So please call in. We'll start taking your calls immediately. 1-800-848-9222. I want to hear what you think about the bill. Tell me if you think money can buy love. I don't know. I think probably not, but it can't hurt. Making money can't hurt. So one issue I want to bring up before I start taking your calls is this. Donald Trump has done an amazing job on the border. Tom Homan, who's the border czar, is an amazing guy. I just am absolutely thrilled by the job that he has done with respect to getting control of the border. I wouldn't have thought it was possible, but Donald Trump and Tom Homan have basically reduced illegal immigration coming into the country every day. Are you ready for this? These are the latest numbers from under Biden to today. A 92% 92% reduction in illegal crossings. 92%. And what that is telling you is that in less than 3 months, Donald Trump was able to completely secure the border. Not entirely, but pretty close to entirely. You know, some people still sneak across the border, and we still have people coming in other ways. But it is an astounding success story. And I'm just going to tip my hat to Tom Homan, who's a good friend of mine, and he just takes so much grief from the liberals. Oh, he's such a horrible person. No, he's not. He's a great man. He cares about this country. And he's not anti-immigration. He and I talk a lot. He understands immigrants are great benefits to our country, but you got to come in the right way. It's that simple. You got to come in the right way. And that's through the legal channels. There's no country that takes more immigrants than we do because we benefit from it. And I know a lot of you listening to this show are either first or second generation immigrants. And I think it is vital to our economy that we continue to have a very generous immigration system, which brings me to my point. Now that we have a secure border, why don't we then think about how we can improve our immigration system and continue? We probably need more legal immigrants. We probably really do. I mean, we have 7 million unfilled jobs. Immigrants come in. They are vital to so many of our industries. You know, I was in Silicon Valley 6-9 months ago. I was amazed at how many of the people are working at our great companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon and so on. They are, so many of them are immigrants from India or Japan or China or, or the Middle East, or many are coming from I was surprised at how many of them were Hispanics who are really working in these research facilities to make us number one in issues like artificial intelligence, robotics, the internet, social media, all this stuff. It's incredibly exciting. We need immigrants in our agriculture industry. And I wanted to bring your attention to 2 programs that I think are really important that are going to be soon debated on. One is a program called the EB-5 program. And this is one that I actually worked, I think this was 10, 12, 15 years ago that we instituted this. This is a program where if someone will invest I think the number, don't quote me on this, I think it's $5 million, but they may change that number. If you're going to invest $5 million in the United States, and excuse me, if you agree to invest in many of the downtrodden areas of the country, like in the inner cities or depressed rural areas, if you go to those areas and invest that money there and you create a certain number of jobs, and again, I forget whether it's 10 or 20 or 50, that you get a green card. Well, this is a win-win situation. It's money that's coming into the country. These are proven job creators, and they create good jobs for American workers. So we should do this. We should expand this program. We should continue it. And these are people who will make American economy stronger and provide jobs in areas where you don't have a lot of economic activity. You know, and some of the areas of Chicago where I grew up, it's just bombed out areas that I feel so sorry for the people who live in those areas. There's no jobs, there's no opportunities there. So these are people who really have revived these communities all over the country, and it's a great program. So let's have more EB-5 immigrants. They pay way more taxes and create more jobs than they take, for sure. Then there's the seasonal employment program. And I bring this up because, look, summer is, Memorial Day is, I think, a week from Monday. So right around the corner. And with this program, we have a program that lets in, I think it's about 150, 160,000 seasonal workers who work on the summer resort areas and the kitchens. They were, if you go like on the Eastern Seaboard and you go to those ocean towns like Rehoboth and places like that, or in Virginia, or in New Jersey on the shore, you'll find so many of these workers are from either Poland, or some of them are from Hungary or Yugoslavia, all these countries, and they do some of the vital work, and they come in for 6 months. They do the work. They provide the services for these towns. And by the way, one of the guys who uses these visas is Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago and his resort in New Jersey. And so it's a win-win situation. So we need more of those visas. We need more of the EB-5s. These are people who are not taking jobs for Americans. They're creating jobs, and they're creating opportunities for them and themselves. And then they go back, they go back in 6 months, and then they come back each year. And it seems to work really well. I was surprised when I was in Rehoboth last summer. We went for about 3 or 4 days. I was surprised at how many of these workers were Eastern Europeans who do great work, and they're thrilled to be here. And then they go back and they come forth. And I think it's It's a vital program. So let's expand those and let's, let more of the H-1B visas in too. These are the people who work in the technology areas. It just makes America stronger. And these are people who will pay taxes. They contribute to American society. That's what America is all about. Okay, I'm going to take a very, very quick break. When I come back, I will be taking your calls on the More Money Hotline, 1-800-848-9222 or 1-800-848-WABC. That's maybe an easier way to remember it, 1-800-848-WABC. I want to hear from the ladies. I want to hear some of my liberal friends. What do you think about the Trump tax cut? Do you think it should pass? And what do you think about the Republicans who held this thing up and said it's not good enough? I want to hear from you all. We'll be right back in 1 minute. This is the More Money Show on WABC. Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. Having a lot of fun this afternoon. And now I'm going to take my favorite part of the program is when I get to take your calls. We are live. We are in color. Every other station is all these boring canned commercials and so on. We like to hear from you. This is Freedom of Speech Radio, and so we have people really lined up. I'm so pleased. The switchboard is lighting up with callers. The question is, what do you think about the Republican tax bill? Should they pass it? Do you think that Chip Roy and others did the right thing by holding this thing up until we get a better deal? I kind of think, I think Chip Roy was right here. I think we can do better than this. But let's hear from Tony in Clifton.
Hi.
Hi.
Steve Moore, I have no trouble. I don't call it holding it up. I call it thinking about it. And Chip Roy is working for our country. So I have no problem with that. I think on the other side, everyone in Congress and in the Senate ought to read JFK and Reagan by Lawrence Kudlow and Brian Dimitrovic.
Right.
People don't understand history. And if you know history, baby, you got it. It's going to work for the country. And as a matter of fact, the country did very well even after we lost JFK until LBJ ate up all the money with his Great America and all his... We need to put people to work. I'm not concerned about the spending, Larry, if it goes into keeping people busy and working. And we need to look at our balance of payments. I think it's a great thing. Listen,
so
lastly,
Tony, I think you're exactly right. I think you're making great points. And, it's amazing that John F. Kennedy, people should listen to him on, you can go to YouTube and listen to his speeches. He was the one who said that it is a paradoxical truth that in America, tax rates are too high and tax revenues are too low. And the best way to raise the revenues is to cut the rates. By the way, Tony, I got one more minute for you, but how many Democrats today believe that? Not many.
Well, the problem is that the Democrats aren't operating in economics. No. They're operating in politicomics, which is political stuff.
That's so true. Okay, Tony, great call. Thank you so much. I love your words of advice and wisdom. So let us go to, I believe we have Gina on from Long Island.
Hello.
Hi, Gina.
Yes, I'm calling about the big new tax bill.
Yes, what do you think?
One of the things that was promised was no tax on Social Security. So I looked it up. I called my local congressman, and he told me it was in the Ways and Means Committee, was never mentioned, and he brought it up, and they said no. What I did see when I looked it up, however, was that there is up to a $4,000 tax credit, but that has an income limit on it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to know what happened to it.
Yeah. So, Gina, I was asking the same questions. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. And by the way, great question, because it's I think a lot of people really care a lot about that. I don't think we should be taxing people on their Social Security benefits because I don't think it's fair. If somebody continues to work while they're a senior citizen, I just turned 65, so I could technically sign up for Social Security any month now if I wanted to. I'm going to continue to work. But, then you don't get, it doesn't treat you fairly if you continue to work. You lose your Social Security benefit and then they tax your Social Security benefit. And I just think it's not fair to the people who continue to work into their late 60s. And I know people are working in their 80s and then they lose Social Security benefits for working. I don't think there's any logic to that. And Gina, right now, you're quite right. That is on the cutting board table. It did not make the cut. And I think it was a mistake. I really believe that we should not be taxing on their Social Security benefits. So keep shouting out about that, folks, if you care about it, as I do. Great call, Gina. Let's try Antoinette, I think it is. Is it Antoinette in New Jersey?
Yeah, it's Antoinette in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. So,
why are you living in such a high tax place?
My parents came from Italy and didn't know any better and landed in Jersey City, and here we are.
Well, Antoinette is a good Italian name.
Yes, and I should have hyphenated on my last name, but that's okay. Love my husband anyway. So a couple of things. One, big, beautiful bill, tax cuts, Social Security. They shouldn't tax my mother again for all the hard work she's put in for many, many years. She's 84 years old.
Yep.
Immigrant from Italy. Both my parents came here, didn't take a dime for the government, and made well for themselves and a better life for me and my sisters and my family, obviously.
It's the American story, but let me just interrupt you for 1 second. I mean, that's the American dream. That's the story of why people came, and people did not come, Antoinette, back in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, 70s for welfare. They came because they wanted a job and opportunity. I'm very pro-immigration, but I do not think we should be giving welfare benefits to immigrants.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My aunts and uncles came here in their 20s, in the 60s and early 70s. And there was industry here. That's the other piece that we're missing. We had manufacturing. Like I said, Jersey City had the silk factories. My aunts and uncles worked. Okay. Yes. It's okay to have immigration, but if we don't have the structure in terms of manufacturing and work for these individuals, then it's fitting. And don't take this the wrong way, 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack bag. It just doesn't work. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, you're exactly right. But I got to ask you a question before I let you, because I've got about 5 or 6 other callers I want to get to. But I want to ask you a question on the way out. And if you don't want to answer this, is fine. But I would really love your advice and thoughts about this. So you live there in New Jersey. Sounds like you've lived there most of your life. New Jersey's not a well-managed state, as you know. It's the taxes are among the highest in the country. And a lot of people are leaving New Jersey because it's so mismanaged, because the costs are so high. And for the last 25 years, it's been almost all Democratic governors. Why doesn't the state give a Republican a try?
Because they keep going for the people like Jack Ciattarella, who just got endorsed by President Trump, who's making a big mistake with that endorsement. I don't know who advises them on that. Pound still Bill. He's our common sense candidate. Was it June 6th, 7th, or 8th, or 10th is the primaries? That's what's wrong. And after my junior high school daughter is done and going into college, we're seriously looking to move. We can't do it.
Yeah. All right. Great call, Antoinette. I love your name, and I hope to meet you in person one of these days. Thanks for calling. I believe we have Rich on from Westchester.
Hey, Steve. Steve, wouldn't it be a good idea for Speaker Johnson to get in touch with Chip Roy and say, listen, hey, Chip, get together with the other 4 Republicans. Form a consensus among the 5 of you.
Yeah.
What you want, what you don't want out, addition, subtraction, and come up with that consensus.
Yes.
Maybe you only need 3 out of 5. Get back to Speaker Johnson and go from there. At least now you know exactly what they want.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, I could not agree more. And by the way, I think Chip Roy has a lot of very sensible reforms. I don't understand why we're not putting in the work requirements right away. By the way, I think you know this, Rich, but every year about $500 billion is stolen from these programs. These are people who are not eligible for the programs who are collecting. So we can cut a lot of money out of these programs without touching the benefits of people who are qualified for the program. I mean, these are people just cheating the system. They're robbing the system, and we need work requirements. Look, I think if you're going to get a government benefit, you should have to work for it. We're not giving us away stuff for free. What do you think?
Absolutely. There's so much money there to get this just from the lower, from the lower part of the tree. There's so much rotten fruit. Go with the bill. Even if it's not perfect, the vast majority of it will greatly help the public, and we'll go from there.
Great call, Rich. I love it. That's why I take your calls, because I learn a lot from you, and there's so much wisdom in the American people, and the people listen to WABC. I always say, by the way, our number, we have 2 lines open, and we have a few more minutes for a couple more calls. 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline. But I've always said I'm not the smartest radio show talk host, but I have the smartest listeners. And You guys have proven it again. Mr. Speaker, do we have one or two more callers?
Yes, let's go to Mike in St. James.
Mike in St. James.
Hello, Steve.
Hi.
Did the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime make it through?
So that's a great question, Mike. I do know that the no tax on tips is in the bill. Do you know if no tax on overtime is in the bill? I'm asking my producer. We're not sure on this. I'm going to have to look that one up. I don't know if no tax on overtime made it. So I'll have to look that up and I'll get back to you.
Okay, Steve, let me ask you something else. The trillions coming from in new deals, investment from Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Any way of translating that into the number of jobs it will create?
Oh my God, that's a great question, Mike. I think you could be talking about, depending how big the number is. I mean, Trump, you never know. Trump is prone to exaggerate, so he thinks he can get, $5, $6, $7, $8 trillion. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. But even if it's like a couple $1 trillion, I think you're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 million more jobs, which would be incredible, and all over the country. And by the way, if it's closer to 8 million, we could be talking about 10 million new jobs for Americans, and those are going to be high-paying jobs. This is foreign investment in the United States, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. And so there's nobody who understands the art of the deal better than Trump. I mean, he's going all over the world. He's selling America, and I love that about him. I think we got time for one or two more quick callers if we have any more, Mr. Producer.
Yep, let's go to George in Rockland.
George.
Hey, hi. How you doing, Steve? Okay, so listen, Steve, I'll do it really quick. Okay, I have sort of an issue. I want to take an issue with you and Larry Kudlow, okay?
Okay.
And my issue with you guys is that while I know the importance of businesses, okay, but I believe that for business to flourish, you need a strong consumer. All the taxes, everything has been talked about is breaks for business after business, whether it's a small one or it's a giant one, okay? All those businesses will not do good unless they have a strong earning of consumerism, okay? And I would say Steve Forbes, one rate for all, okay, seems to be, in my opinion, a beginning to go that way, okay? When you get a strong consumer, strong purchasing power here, you get strong businesses. And that's what makes this country different from other parts of the world, okay? You cannot rely only on government.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there because you're making a great point. But I want to kind of correct you on the chain of events of how an economy works. So you're right, of course, that a business can't sell things if there aren't consumers to buy them. No question about that. But the process starts before that. The fact is, until you have a business that's creating something and there are people working for that business and have a job, they don't have the money to be consumers. So it starts with the business. Look, I'm not for welfare for business or anything like that. I'm just saying we need to nourish our businesses and let those small businesses grow and let them expand and let them become healthy and hopefully medium and large size businesses. I remember, people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs literally started their businesses, Apple and Microsoft, in their garages, and then they became major titans of industry. So you need healthy businesses. Then the businesses can hire the workers, and people can't spend money until they have a job. And that's why I want our businesses to succeed, because the healthier the businesses, the more people they can hire. That's why Trump bringing in all of this investment capital is going to create jobs for Americans. Then you're going to have more competition in the job market that will bid up wages. People will have more money. That's the history of America, is rising wages through healthy businesses. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more. We have literally 90 seconds. Do you think, Mr. Producer, we can squeeze one more in? I don't think we do not have time. So let me just say this on the way out, folks. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It is, and by the way, next weekend is Memorial Day weekend, but we'll have a show. Keep the faith. I believe David Asman and Newt Gingrich were both right when they said, and I've been saying this myself, once we get this tax bill passed into law and prevent a major tax increase, because remember, if we don't pass this, everybody's going to pay a lot more taxes next year. Once we get that thing passed and on Donald Trump's desk, which I'm praying it happens before 4th of July, and then once we get more of these trade deals consummated, and I think that is going to happen in the course of the next few months, we are on the precipice of one of the great economic booms in our country. I really believe that it's going to benefit everyone. To quote Jack Kemp and John F. Kennedy, a rising tide really does lift all boats. So I'm super bullish on America, folks. I hope you are too. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back next weekend. And now you're going to hear from my two favorite financial advisors about how to make more money.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Ryan Payne and Bob Payne back again on the More Money Show from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne, talking about the markets, the economy, and your retirement. For our financial autopsy today, Frank, you worked on a case recently where you had a widow. She recently, sadly, her husband had passed, and she came to you for some financial advice. So I thought we could break that down and talk about some of the issues that you addressed. And you got this specific woman, I don't like saying that, and you were able to get this person. Thank you. You were able to get this, I'm going to say this woman.
This human being.
Yeah.
This subject.
This buying unit.
It's a ticking tax time bomb, y'all.
We used to work with some insurance people, and they used to call people buying units. So when you're going to buy an insurance product or an annuity, I think that's a warning sign right there when you're calling people buying units. But you did help this lady, did a great job, who was a widow. Why don't you break it down for us and just how you helped her get on her path to financial independence?
Yeah, so, subject 1, 2, 3.
Don't call people buying units, but go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear this.
So I met this wonderful, wonderful person. Their husband, unfortunately, had just passed away. They always had their spouse kind of being more hands-on with the assets. So
yes.
A lot of the money that she inherited, that she was living off of was money that she inherited, actually.
Right. And this is so common, right? So the one spouse tends to be involved with the finances, and then we have what Bob likes to call the uninterested spouse. So in this case, would you call her the uninterested spouse, the one that didn't deal with the finances? So all of a sudden she's like in the driver's seat and doesn't know how to drive, essentially?
Exactly. And
not that women are bad drivers either, by the way. So that was not.
No, actually, I would say in most situations, most of my female clients are the ones who I'm talking to about their finances.
Yes.
As for their full family. Unfortunately, just for this situation, she was the one that was, did everything else, took care of the children, took care of the household, took care of everything.
Yeah, 100%.
The social life, the, X, Y, and Z's.
Yeah.
So when it came to her now being in charge of everything, she just needed a little help. She needed a little hands-on structure. So we went through all of her accounts, and we noticed a few really big pain points.
That's a Payne pain point. Yeah. What was one of the biggest pain points that you saw?
So one of the biggest things that I saw was she inherited her husband's IRA as an inherited account.
Okay, so explain that. What does that mean? Because usually you inherit your spouse's IRA, you have it as a retirement account as well, and then you take it out of your life expectancy at a certain age, right? That's the simple.
That's the simple, right? Sometimes, and I think a majority of the times, what you want to do is inherit it as your own. So instead of it being inherited as, this is an inherited account and it will say that, you want to inherit it as, this is now Frankie Lagerteria's account. This is my IRA. It's on me.
So what happened? Broad strokes.
Broad strokes, what happened was she inherited as an inherited account, and so now something that could have been growing and not touching for 10, 20, 30 years is now having RMDs.
So now she's forced to take the money out and start that government partnership before she intended.
Yes.
And do you know how much roughly she has to take out every year and pay taxes on?
Roughly, so, $1 million account. Luckily, she's in Florida, so she doesn't have to worry about state taxes. But still, like you say, Chris, an IRA is a joint account with the IRS. That's my favorite Chrissyism.
Well, this is why IRA planning is so critical, right? Because the way that you inherit this money, the way you take that money, it can have huge implications from a tax perspective. And nobody did planning here. If you imagine that all of a sudden, hey, guess what? You're going to have to pay taxes on $1 million and you have 10 years to pay it. That's a rude awakening, as Chris likes to call it. That's like a buzzkill.
Well, the thing that blows my mind, guys, it's first of all, whoever this person was working with, Frankie, didn't know what they were doing with this client. And if that's not financial malpractice, I don't know what is. But then, what I also noticed with all these custodians and banks, they're not even letting the client know what their RMD or the required minimum distribution is on an inherited IRA. The rules have become so complex and so changeable that they're not even giving them any direction. And then if you call the IRS, they don't even call you back. So, I mean, if you don't have, a really good financial person, you're going to be in a big world of hurt with these IRAs going down the line.
It's like a scavenger hunt. I mean, you really have to go through the weeds to figure out what you owe and when you owe it.
In this situation, knowing that you had to take all this money out over a 10-year period, what was the strategy?
So now we're going to use that for her expenses, right? Whereas we're going to start tapping into that, using that for her expenses, using that for money that she needs to pay her bills and live off of, versus before maybe I would have looked at her brokerage accounts. But now I'm like, let's leave that for the kids. That's such a big, that's so important for her. That's a hot topic that she wants to make sure she lives a good inheritance. Well, hey, that has a step up in basis, so we'll leave that alone. This one has to be liquidated.
So because, she worked with you, you were able to turn, potentially disastrous situation into a good situation. But what I want to know is, when you informed her of this, what was her reaction? How did she feel about it? Was she upset? Was she concerned?
All of the above. She was blindsided. Like she had no idea. She was like, no, I don't have to take RMDs until I turn 73. Like I have, several years till then.
Now all of a sudden, every year she doesn't take that money, that would have been a 10% tax penalty, which would have been a huge deal had she not met you.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you're already paying taxes on this IRA, so this is already money that you're not getting, you're not keeping, that you've saved for. And now you have a penalty on top of it. It's like, there's plenty of other ways I can waste my money.
I'll tell you what, I'm really impressed, Frankie. You took a buying unit, turned her into a client, and saved her a whole buttload of money.
So yeah, in a perfect world,
we should really buttload of money, Chris. I've heard that term in a while. But I think that's the problem right now is the rules have changed so much, and I know you've been really on it. But really, it is more complex than ever when it comes to your actual retirement account planning, and you have to be so much more proactive than you used to be. But I think the plus side is if you are proactive, there's a lot of taxes you can actually save by just thinking about this ahead of time.
Absolutely.
And just to make things simpler, we now have a whole new tax bill being proposed. So, we'll finally find out what our income tax rates are or our state tax rates are. I'm sure they're going to do something to adjust the RMDs and the taxable nature of Roths and IRAs. So stay tuned, guys.
If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, myself and Bob and our team at Payne Capital will run for you our total financial master plan, and we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. There's not a firm out there that will do this work up front. We go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, and we'll hone in on every financial issue you need to address today, whether it's that income plan for retirement. How do you take Social Security? There's a lot of ways to take it, but one right way for you. How do you draw from your portfolio the most tax efficient way? We'll give you a full income plan, factor in inflation so you don't run out of money. We're going to look at diversification. Markets have been all over the place, up and down. Has your portfolio been extremely volatile? Or have you been sitting in cash? Paralysis by analysis, can't figure out what to do. We'll put together a full diversified investment game plan, show you how to grow your wealth, tie it to your goals, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you high cost, tax inefficient products, whether it's an annuity, mutual fund, insurance product, brokerage product. We're going to go through every investment you have, deep dive. We're going to show you how to reduce all the internal costs and optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make, it's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We literally have 4 slots left. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, all you need to do is call or text at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. If you call or text us right now at 844-752-6692, that's 844-PLAN-NYC, 844-PLAN-NYC.